afternoon. My name is Cody Kane, and I run sales and marketing for Agromin, California's largest organic waste processor. And I'm excited to have joining me today on our very first podcast for Agromin. So bear with us for any technical difficulties. But I have here Christine Calvin, the owner of Killdeer Farms in West Sacramento, and one of our latest healthy soil heroes. Welcome, Christine, to the podcast.
Thank you, Cody. We're delighted to be able to be here and tell a little bit about our story.
Well, excellent. So we want to cover a few things today. So the first, we want to kind of explore the interconnected stories of growth and restorations at Killdeer Farms. And first, we'll delve into the vibrant world of small flower farming and discussing both the joys and the challenges that you've faced in going into this new world. And then we're going to uncover the remarkable journey of your landscape projects and highlighting particularly the crucial role of partnerships and grant funding. Then finally, we'll talk about how Agromin's products have helped you to achieve your goals and what you're trying to accomplish with your property, specifically the use of compost and our native soil mix. So are you ready to give us a little overview of what Killdeer Farms is and kind of what your goals are for the farm?
Awesome. Let's do it.
Okay, take it away.
All right. So thanks again, everyone. I'm Christine. And in 2017, my husband, Scott, and I got a wild idea to purchase an abandoned parcel in our community. We did it not knowing that we were going to become farmers. It was simply an eyesore and we wanted a project. And so we drove by enough times that finally we thought, okay, well, we're going to buy this property and we're going to bring it back to its original state of glory, whatever we imagined that might be. And along the way, we became accidental farmers. And we now run a floral subscription program, U-Picks, and farmers markets here in West Sac at the property. And nice. We're in a much different place than we were when we first purchased the property, but it has a long way to go ecologically. And so we're putting in the work year over year to restore habitat, bring the birds back, and rehabilitate soil that was for a long time very, very abused and neglected.
It does look that way for sure. So who owned the property before you bought it?
Well, there was a series of short stint owners, but the larger picture was that years ago, this entire area of West Sacramento was monocropped alfalfa 50 years ago. And so our 5-acre parcel is just one slice of what was previously a much larger operation. Some other folks bought it with other ideas along the way. It now has a 4,000 square foot, 4-story steel framed barn that I lovingly call Noah's Ark because it is such a monstrosity, but it's also a huge part of the reason that we bought the property because the barn can be anything. And it really is what kind of got our wheels turning to inspired us to, start a business here. But the soil has taken, like I said, it was monocropped alfalfa. It's taken a lot of pesticides. It has taken heavy equipment. It was fallow for at least 20, if not 25 or more years. Just a real state of disrepair. And so what we were taking on was a pretty significant challenge.
Yes. And the property's 5 acres, you said?
Yes, 5 acres.
And so you can't kind of tackle it all at once. So, how did you start? What was your first step in that process?
Yeah, well, the first year was really just cleanup. It was a disaster. So in addition to, and I'm not joking, the 400 decoy ducks and the camper trailer and the bench pressing equipment inside of the barn with 20 years of mice and pigeons and whatever other horrors were waiting for us. The prior owner was kind of a hoarder. And the property itself was we cleared 6 20-yard dumpsters of debris. And at the time that we bought the property, we didn't own a tractor. We were doing this by hand. It was railroad ties. There was a pool. There was fencing. There was all sorts of shipping equipment. And it just was it was cleanup. It was repairing the well and building, a well house. It was installing irrigation. The property had one significant tree and one hose bib. And so it really started at the most primal, the most primal level of just trying to get it to a place that we couldn't even start until,
Right.
we got it cleaned up. And the saying is the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. So I wanted to get trees going immediately. And so I would go down to Lowe's down the street, and there was a time at which they would put all of their half dead trees out for sale for $10. And I didn't care what kind of tree it was or what condition it was in. I was going to rehab these $10 trees because we needed them. So we started getting these sick little trees from, Lowe's in, and I would carry 5-gallon buckets of water to hand water them for the first year all over the property, because we had no other way. But I wasn't going to wait any longer to get roots in the ground. We had to get going.
So that was kind of your first attempt at rehabilitation, is essentially just trying to get some things into the ground and break up the soil so that, root breaking up the soil, creates that porosity where the water can start to penetrate and you can start to grow other things. So that sounds like a good first step, really. And so how did you go from there to getting into small flower farming on the farm?
So as we were cleaning up decoy ducks and hauling stuff off to the dump, we were trying to figure out, what kind of business could the property support. And we ran through a number of different scenarios, everything from a wedding venue to, my husband's an incredible brewer. So we had some thoughts about turning it into a brewery. Well water and septic systems, unfortunately, don't work well with yeast. So that one went out the door. And then I bought a book. I bought a book about flowers, and my whole world opened up for the first time. I had not been really exposed to flowers before. And I thought, oh my gosh, I think I could do this. And, I think a lot of people take a look at that and be like, oh, how hard can that be? Right? Surely I can be a flower farmer. So down the rabbit hole I went on flowers, and we started very small. We bought a little, rototiller that is still kicking our butts out there right now in that hard clay soil, and just put in our 5 25-foot beds with some chicken wire. And we thought, okay, we're going to put some seeds in the ground, and do I like this? Will I kill them? What does this feel like? And it was amazing. And sorry, my husband's stretching. He has to go back out to rototilling. So we started and really fell in love with it. And we were telling our story on Instagram and Facebook, and the community really rallied around us, and people started coming by. People started asking questions. They wanted to know, and they really were supportive. And additionally, we had the benefit that this parcel is right on a frontage road on the main highway that runs through West Sacramento into Clarksburg. So we have folks driving by that have been driving past this property for 20 years. Right? And they know what it looks like. And then all of a sudden somebody's there. All of a sudden the trash is getting moved. All of a sudden the barn is painted and the windows are fixed and there's a fence, and people are stopping by and asking, what are you doing? What are you doing? And for a long time, the question was, I don't know. And now, we have a thriving small business here and have really dived headlong into cut flowers, lavender, and pumpkins, and are focused on serving really the West Sac community with our products.
Wow. And so, we all know it's just not quite that simple.
Yeah.
So what are the challenges that you have faced, whether that be soil health or pest management or, water? I know you talked about your irrigation system you had to put into place. But obviously with compacted soil, you're going to have
Mhm.
issues with water runoff, with collection of water. So, talk us through that. What are these challenges you had to face?
Yeah, well, every issue you just named, we have. If the problem exists, it exists here at Killdeer Farms. And part of the issue is because we didn't know what we didn't know when we bought this property. We are not historically farmers, and so when we purchased the parcel, I wasn't thinking about soil health. I wasn't thinking about vegetation and making a living out of the soil. Had I had that frame of reference, we certainly would not have bought this property. And we are really in it for a struggle over here. We have compacted clay. We have these wonderful things like bomb cyclones and atmospheric rivers that just hammer us. Every year that we've been here, we've lost our fall planted crop, with the exception of this year. So we not only struggle with water, retention in the winter, right? That our water table is so high. Our water table is at 3 feet.
Oh, wow.
So we have a super high water table. We have nowhere for that drawdown to go. It wreaks absolute havoc on our septic system, as you can imagine, with that pressure. Because we don't have natural ways to move water yet, we are going to be installing a dry creek soon. It's one of our next projects. We have been manually moving all of that water with pumps and fire hoses. I mean, things I never thought in my life I would own and be shopping for. I now, where they run on gas, they run on power, they're solar, they're, trash pumps and every kind of pump you can think of, I have. So we move that water into what we now lovingly call Killdeer Pond, which is just a low spot on the property. And then thank the Lord, we actually have an irrigation ditch that runs 700 feet along one of our property line. So then we run it all. We've actually worked with the RCD guys to cut a channel into the irrigation ditch so that the pond that we made will flow into the ditch. It's quite remember that game we played as kids, Chutes and Ladders or Cat and Mouse? We had to build all the contraptions make it move. And then of course it's bulletproof clay in the summer. And all of that standing water brings pests. Weak plants bring pests. And let's go back and remind you, there was no vegetation here, which means we had no songbirds. We had, very few birds of prey. I haven't really over the years seen that many snakes. There was just no life. There was no life here. So if you want to think about natural pest management, it just didn't exist. And so we've really been working very hard, in addition to trying to establish our farm, establish our business, and rehab this property, to take on at least one, if not two, major restoration projects a year.
Well, tell us a little bit more about that. Where are you going with the restoration projects, and what do you have on the horizon?
Yeah, so we've been really grateful to have such a wonderful relationship with the Center for Land-Based Learning. When I first became a farmer, I had no frame of reference for where to find information. I'm very well connected within the business community, but I don't have a network within ag.
Mm.
And so my first step was to reach out to the Center for Land-Based Learning and learn. And I became a board member so that I could be as close as possible to their educators and their resources. And so that was, a really great first step for me, was to just start meeting other farmers, understand the classes that were available, start learning about the resources that were available, so I could, start making a plan. And where that led was to learning about grants available through NRCS, I always get this wrong. It's USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Services.
Right.
And they have grant funding available for small farms and property owners who want to do these types of restoration projects. And then the benefit is that the Center for Land-Based Learning works with students who are taking classes in ecology, and they do the labor. So you have a landowner who says, I want to do a restoration project. In our case, it was putting in our first hedgerows. So we applied for EQIP funding from NRCS, and we got that funding. So it paid for all of the plants, all of the irrigation equipment, and the guys that work at NRCS actually make all that plant selection for us. They do that work, because I'm not an expert at California native plants and how to build a hedgerow. So they do all the plant selection. They bring it all here, they pay for it. And then the students that are participating in the SLUES program at Center for Land-Based Learning come and plant all the plants.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So I can go about my day as a farmer. I can, I got my day job, and I can go to work and I come home, and 4 hours later I have 700 feet of beautiful native hedgerow. And so we've put in 2. We've applied for more funding to put in this dry creek. So now this year we're also working with the Rotary Club of Sacramento, who has funds available for environmental restoration projects. So we're putting in a pollinator garden, educational space that will focus on attracting native bees. We have a ton of milkweed going in to support monarch butterflies, bird boxes, bat boxes, owl boxes, you name it. It's all going to be part of, it's about 1/16 of an acre. All told. So we've been very fortunate and blessed to be able to identify grant resources that help us move these projects along.
And so, I mean, obviously we've had an administration change, and there has been a cutback in funding on a number of fronts. Do you have any insight as to how this is affecting NRCS grants?
I am working under the assumption that we will not be funded this year.
Okay.
But that is also why I've always been mindful to diversify where we're looking for resources. And there's a lot of resources out there. My hope is that while federal grant funding is on pause, that the administration might see the value in this work, and it will pick back up, or the faucet will be turned back on in some way, is my hope. It's not my expectation, but there are a number of grants available to small and large farmers who are looking to do this type of work. It just takes some Googling, and I really feel like the first grant begets the next, because once you have a resource, you can start asking more questions. We received a small grant from the Sacramento Natural Foods Co-op. The grocery store does a program for small farmers. So there's resources to be had out there to do this type of work.
Well, I'm glad you'd be able to tap into that, because I know a lot of people that we work with, different farmers, often they struggle with these grants because it's reimbursement grants. So they have to go spend a bunch of money to then hope that they get paid back in a timely fashion, which is not always the case with the federal government. So I
Right.
know some of these can be a challenge. So it's really good to hear a positive experience about what you've been able to the support you've been able to find, first of all, and then, to get that momentum to carry that forth is really a challenge because you have to go find it yourself. It's not somebody waving her flag saying, "Look at me, I got all the answers for you." You had to go dig and find all this for yourself. So the good news is
Yeah,
it's
I'll
out
say
there.
that. Yeah, the labor of it is not insignificant, but I will say to anybody who hasn't done it before, it's don't let it be intimidating because the actual process, right? You think like, oh, I have to write a grant. Like, what does that mean? A
Right.
lot of times it's just a form. With
Mm.
NRCS, they send somebody here to my property to meet with us. They do the application. They just walk around with us, observe our space, talk about our problems, look at the soil, take some tests, and help us make a recommendation that they think is fundable. So with that, I'm really just filling out forms. It wasn't this big, complicated application. And so if
Mm.
anybody out there hasn't taken this step because they feel like it's daunting, don't. There's a lot of folks out there that are ready to help you and make the processes simple.
And so how were you able to get them to pay up front for a lot of this material and you just benefited from it? I mean, because it seems almost too good to be true.
Yeah, it is kind of a too good to be true situation. Because of the relationship between the restoration services, I actually never had an exchange of funds.
Okay.
So the money came into NRCS. The guys who needed to do all the plant planning and purchasing just did it.
Okay.
So there was never even a capital outlay on on our part.
And what was the period of time that it took? So let's say you filled out your grant application, July 1st was the last day to submit. And then from that point, how long did it take for you to get approved, for you to
Mhm.
get action moving?
The NRCS grant works pretty quickly. The application is due in November. And
Okay.
then, for all intents and purposes, you have to start the project in the spring because that's when the earth wants it.
Right.
No sense trying to do these things in Sacramento in August. And you have to be complete, you have to be done in a year.
Okay.
So it is a time bound. In our case, we weren't complete in 1 year, but we were in good standing because we had taken all of the correct steps. So we were showing that everything was moving as it was supposed to. And so there was no problem.
But if that was outsourced to the NRCS and volunteers, then what did you have to do to stay in compliance?
Just make sure that it was getting done.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
that sounds like a pretty good gig.
Answer
I mean,
my
honestly.
emails and say, yes, please come and come check on it. It's here.
So the obvious question, what does that commit you to by taking the funds from, the federal government? What does this sign you up for a federal program that lists all the farms that are now, under the control of the federal government because you took money from them? Or like what are the caveats that go along
Yeah,
with
I
this?
am obligated to keep it alive for 3 years, right? And so the hedgerow gets planted as little plugs. And so it's incumbent upon me to make sure that I keep them alive. And they do account for some loss. I think it's 15% loss um the district will just come back and replant them without it's covered.
Okay.
The wonderful thing is these species are they're meant to be here. So even after 6 months, my mule fat plant is 6 feet tall in the first year, having gone in
Wow.
as a plug. I mean, it towers over me. The ceanothus went in as a plug last year. It's flowering, it's budding up and flowering right now. It's it's a
Wow.
hedge. So it's healthy. we've had some die off. It's my responsibility now to go and replace what is now going to die in the second year. But largely it's looking really good.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. What a great story. It's so good to hear that all these resources, well, at least they were available, to be able to do this. But, surely there's a lot going on in California. It's a very big focus on this. So I would imagine this will continue, at least in some form or another. So what are the next steps for your farm then? So now that you're growing flowers, what's the next step for you guys?
That's always a great question. So we are going to so this year we're focusing on getting our pollinator garden installed. And that is, like I mentioned, it's about a 1/16 of an acre. And I'm really excited about this project because we prepped this area for planting in 2020. So it has been composted and mulched and sitting for 5 years now. And I was just starting to pull up, there's a ground cover on it that's got a little invasive, so I need to remove it before we do this planting. And I was pulling it out this morning, and there's this wonderful mold that, I can see all the mushroom activity. And I mean, the soil is looking really, really terrific after, just having that bit of care. We're always adjusting our business model. My husband and I both work full-time off the farm. And so figuring out where that balance is of, actually being able to manage and run, we kind of have to run our business part-time, and figuring out how to do that. So we focus on a floral subscription program here in West Sacramento for West Sacramento residents only. We have a monthly market that focuses on other small farms. That's once a month. That's starting in May. And we began that because we and a lot of other small farmers have day jobs. We do not have the capacity to go stand at a farmer's market on Saturday and Sunday. Like I can't. I have to farm.
You're right.
Right. And so we thought we have to do the market here. I have to do it here. And we found lots of other small farmers that were in the same situation that we're in, whether it's honey or beef or eggs or handmade tea, whatever the case. And so we host those farmers and makers once a month for a community market. And it's great. Our local coffee shop comes and makes mimosas, and it's really a good time. People can wander around in the flower garden. And then we also distill all of our own lavender essential oil here at the farm and have a line of bath and body products. And so it's always kind of which lever are we, ramping up on or off in any given year. But this year, I'm just really excited that these restoration projects are taking place. And we've already had deliveries of Agromin soil and compost come in for tree plantings that I want to do in the fall. So those that space has now been covered and mulched, and we're working it through. So there's still a lot to do around here. All of this is being, like I said, it's a 5-acre parcel, but we're only in production on a little bit more than an acre. So there's still a lot of fallow land that needs to be cared for.
Well, so I want to talk a little bit about the Agromin Healthy Soil Hero program. And you are one of the first that we have. We started this last year. Jessica's who works for Agromin, our marketing manager, she's came up with this great idea to showcase people like Killdeer Farms, what you guys are doing. And because I think we need to start to tell the story of restoration, and we need to tell the story of success, and failure. What are we doing to, win? And what are the areas that we can all win together? And that's what I think we were thinking of when we put together the Healthy Soil Ambassador Program, is to work with, people like yourself who has really gone through the mill to get to where you are right now. And sharing this kind of information is inspirational. And that's why we wanted to have this platform to talk to yourself and others in the future about what is possible. And so, what has been your experience so far as a healthy soil hero?
Well, it's been wonderfully beneficial to us. I love the opportunity to share our story. But also, like I said, and like so many other small farms and small businesses, we need support, especially as you can imagine, this is a big project to take on. We're running the business as a part-time business, so margins are real skinny, and it's wonderfully beneficial to be able to partner with an organization, a company like Agromin, that can help us with our projects, with soil, with amendments, with our compost, with our mulch. It really, first off, makes it so much more efficient for me. It's one less thing that I have to source and find. It's also a product that we trust, because I think every farmer or gardener out there has gotten a bad load of soil or compost at some point, and then you're really left in a very difficult situation. I have a number of raised beds. We, before our partnership with Agromin, had purchased some 50-50 mix for a different company. It is extremely sandy. It is not 50-50. And my plants are battling. Finally, I was like, forget it. I'm putting in Australians. So I'm growing like protea now, because what else am I going to put in, what else am I going to put in this box?
Nice pivot, by the way.
Yeah, we've gotten, poor compost from other companies, and you're paying for that. You're paying for the time, the labor, you're tilling it into your soil. You're counting on it for your plant health and your revenue. And then, I mean, it's bad. And so I'm just really grateful to be able to partner and know that the quality of the product that I'm getting from Agromin is what specifically what we need. And I can count on it. And I love using it.
Well, that's great to hear. It is a challenge to make quality product, because it's a lot of it is the material that we get, and we have to, sift through the plastic contamination, sift through the concrete, sift through the dead goats, sift through all sorts of things that we get, come into our facility that we have to, take out of the composting process. And, we have a lot of rigid, mandates that we have to hit as a composter. All the test results have to be in and confirmed before any material can leave our facility. So there's a lot of restrictions that we've got as a composter too, in order to maintain that quality level that, farmers like yourself can come to expect. So another important question: how can the audience get involved more? How can they visit farms? Can they follow on social media? Where is that? How can they support local agriculture? What can you leave our audience with from your experience as a farmer, even if it is just part-time? And, what can you express to our audience that will help them get inspired to do their part?
Yeah, well, I would say, obviously, if you are a small farmer out there, go find your grants, right? Go find the money, because it's out there and it can help you. And that can be everything from restoration work to value added product or marketing. We received a grant to help us with our packaging for our soaps and hand creams.
Oh, wow.
We needed to buy a copper still. And, if you've ever had a catalytic converter stolen, the price of copper is quite high. So, getting a big copper still imported was not going to be a small expense for us, and found a small business grant that we wrote. Wow. And we're willing to help us buy a piece of needed equipment. So go find the money. It's out there. I would say to, anybody that is on a small scale or a gardener, one of the things that I have really endeavored in our own messaging here at the farm is to make what we're doing here accessible and manageable for folks who want to take this home to their garden in the subdivision down the street, right? Everybody in West Sac sitting on the same soil, right? Every gardener in Clarksburg or in the Delta is living the same situation, right? You might have a different variable, but we're all sitting on this clay together. And so my goal is always to take what we're doing at, I mean, it's kind of scale. A big farmer, would say, well, it's not really scale. 700-foot hedgerow isn't that big of a deal. But being able to show our guests and our visitors the types of vegetation and plants that will support bluebirds in their backyard, or why you should plant milkweed and support the monarch butterflies, or if you have a soggy, boggy spot, in a corner of your house, like here's some things that you can plant that will not only like solve your aesthetic problem, but maybe actually help the soil, remediate the issue moving forward. So I try to make everything as digestible as possible. Folks follow us primarily on Instagram and Facebook at Killdeer Farms. And I also put out an email newsletter about twice a month that talks about events coming up at the farm, how you can visit. We do U-Picks and the market that I mentioned. But I also always try to include resources like promo codes from Agromin so that folks can go get compost for their projects, or quick hit tips and hints, because people are definitely watching what we're doing over here, and I want to set a good example for what's possible.
Well, that's fantastic. You clearly are doing that. It's really a hero's journey that you've gone through to have to persevere. But I'm really amazed at the success you have with the grants. I mean, that is really refreshing to hear. I know a lot of people throw their arms up in frustration. I never get these grants. I always apply. Nothing ever happens. But you're an example of it really is happening. So, so thank you for that.
I mean, I do want to say, like, we're a small farm, and so I don't know what large scale producers are going through when it comes to this type of funding. Like, I can't speak to that. And I also want to say, like, not all of these grants are huge. I've had a $6,000 grant, a $500 grant, but like everything is something when when your business is on the line. That's $500 that I don't have, that I can spend on something that's needed.
Well, that is definitely a case. I mean, every little bit helps, right? So to wrap up, we've got some Q&A, some questions that have come in that I wanted to run by you and kind of get your feedback on before we wrap up today, if you're up for that.
I'm ready.
Perfect. So first question we got come in is, how did you get introduced to compost originally?
Oh, okay. That's a good question. Let me think. So the whole world of soil health and microbiology really was foreign to me until I found my way to the Center for Land-Based Learning. Even before we bought the farm, okay, so we lived in a subdivision down the street, and I had like a house where I can see 6 neighbors' yards from my yard, right? And I had one planter box that could grow like 2 tomatoes and some cilantro, and it like you could just buy bags at Lowe's and fill up your box, and that's all I knew. So the whole ecosystem and the microbial life beneath my feet was brand new until I really started had the opportunity to take soil classes and like dig deeper into this. And composting and cover cropping right away, we knew were the number 1 and number 2 things that we had to do in order to start. And so from the beginning, I mean, we couldn't even get the cover crop to grow. It was so bad out here. Oh, but now, our peas and oats are luscious. So it's really where it began at the very beginning, was just taking those classes from the Center for Land-Based Learning.
And how did Agromin's products help improve your soil?
Oh man. Okay. So we go through a ton of compost because we're still in, recovery mode. I wish I could be a farmer that practiced no-till, but that's just not the way that it's going to work here at Killdeer Farms for quite a long time. And so we are going through um, truckloads of your compost product every year on less than 1 acre because we are still tilling our beds and adding compost every time we turn a bed. And it's been very instrumental for us on the growing side, but also just as we're preparing areas of the property for restoration, we are layering Agromin products. So we're adding 50/50, we're adding compost, we're mulching, and we're leaving it covered and letting, the water and the worms do their work. Because it's hard clay. And now that we're starting to clear some of that back and start planting, you have that, beautiful addition of organic matter that wasn't there before. And I don't know the math off the top of my head, but I know that it's hundreds of thousands of gallons of additional water capture when you can increase that organic matter by an inch. So we're working hard to do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, basically, compost holds its weight in water. So, that's also going to help massively with, any kind of long-term growth strategies that you've got in the soil for sure. So, okay, I've got some other questions here. So what are the best practices for effective pest control that you have come up with so far?
Okay, well, TBD, because we're still getting hammered over here. So I am not as educated yet as I would like to be on integrated pest management, but I'm starting to put the pieces together and I want to take more steps toward that. Part of that for us has been installing these hedgerows because I want more beneficial, insects to be here. The birds are doing a great job right now on my snapdragons, which have unfortunate caterpillars. So we're really doing the best that we can to start with healthy plants, start with healthy soil. We have high total dissolved solids and also some pH fluctuation in our water throughout the year, which also challenges us when it comes to plant health and vitality because this is still really very much an area of struggle for us. Less so later in the season. Later in the season, we battle with bacteria and molds. This time in the season, I'm just waiting for those aphids, man. They're coming. They're coming. So ladybugs, lacewings, just more of the good stuff as best we can.
Well, you mentioned an interesting thing about, water being a critical function in all of this. And a lot of people fail to understand that, if you're putting, water, reclaimed water or chlorinated water or some kind of water that's been treated and not necessarily the way it needs to be to grow crops, then you're going to have a failure with your crops. And we run into that a lot at Agromin as well, where people come in and say, well, we got your material, but nothing grew there. And then we have them test the water that they're using, and they find that the water has really, off pHs or really high metal content or lots of other potential issues that can affect the growing of, the particular crop that they're trying to grow. So I think it's important not only, like you said, to recognize the soil health, but also the water health is really important to be able to keep track of that.
Well, and that's a good point. My husband is running or sending off some of our soil for a particular test, and I'm regretting now that I don't recall which test he's running, but he's going to send water with it, just for that very very reason. It's not going to make a whole lot of sense if we get the soil test back, but there's no coordinating water test with it.
Right. Yeah, kind of a huge portion of this.
Yeah. And folks forget that. I
solution.
try to remember. Occasionally, we'll have workshops here for just for home gardening of cut flowers, and without giving, making people's heads explode, I try to help them to understand that their water may be chlorinated or there's additives, in their city water that could be having an impact on their garden.
Yeah, for sure. It's a real thing. So here, two more questions for you, and then we'll finish up. So what is one of the key business lessons that you have learned in starting your flower farm?
Oh man, there's a lot. Okay. Luckily I'm not a very fearful person, or else I don't think I would have started this whole thing in the first place. But I would say that don't be afraid to fail. But fail as small and as cheaply as you can, as quickly as possible, right? And so when I'm gonna roll out a new product, or I'm designing the t-shirts for this year, whatever the case might be, I'll A/B test stuff just on Instagram. Hey followers, I've got 4,000 of you. Which t-shirt do you like? What fragrance do you like? I am not a consumer of essential oils, but I make them and I sell them. So I need to learn a lot more about my customer base. So before I went down a whole rabbit hole on packaging, do folks use roller balls or do folks use dropper bottles? I don't know. I don't buy these things. And so I did a lot of asking of our customers, right? Like I let my customers inform me what our business is going to look like. I think a lot of folks get it flipped the other way around. So I do a lot of testing, and if it's going to fail, I want it to fail really quick and before I've invested a lot of money in it. Right. And so, don't be afraid to fail, but also try to fail as quickly and as cheaply as you possibly can.
Great advice. Honestly, great advice. It really is. So last question. What are the best tips for navigating grant applications?
I just missed a really good opportunity on a federal grant that was pretty large, because I didn't dig deep enough into the deadline schedule. So if you want to start working on grants, I would just spend some time not only doing your homework, but like if you find a couple that you're interested in, like make the phone calls and figure out, is this going to be a heavy lift? If it is, how much time do you have? If it's not, can you hurry up and get it done? So I have a hard time keeping my paperwork straight, and you're going to need all of it, right? You're going to need your business, your TIN, your EIN, your this parcel, you need your parcel number, this, like, get your stuff in one place to make it easy on yourself. Because it's typically me feeling like I have to run around and find a bunch of things. And then I have a day job to go to and a farm to manage. And I don't have time to like go find that account number somewhere. And then I miss it. So just having all of your business items organized and ready, because you're going to need them.
Christine, you have been a wealth of fantastic information today. I mean,
awesome. I'm glad that I hope somebody took a nugget.
And your enthusiasm is contagious, and it's clear that you wouldn't be able to do this if it wasn't a passion for you, because it is clearly a lot of work, a lot of energy, a lot of research, a lot of investment. So, you give heart to everyone who has this idea. I want to try this for myself, but I'm a bit of afraid. Where do I start? Oh my gosh, she just went crazy and bought a property and then tried to figure it out. So like
don't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't do that.
You're an example for us all in many ways. But thank you again, Christine, for your time. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to working more with you over the coming years.
It has been a pleasure. So thanks so much, Cody. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to doing more restoration work with you guys.
Fantastic. Have a great weekend.
You too.